just what this show needs. More mutants.
Certainly I had no idea that I would be here 20 years later talking about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And when it happened and it really took off, it was a really fantastic thing to be a part of. It was really excellent.
If you tried to say, we're going to do this show about turtles and Zen Buddhism and ninjas and martial, people would say, no, you're crazy.
I think it's just the fact that it was so strange. It was such a bizarre combination of stuff. I think it really appealed to kids, just, being so active and colorful and not really violent, but pretty action-oriented, pretty packed. And you had all those little elements that could really spark the imagination.
Children's shows, are made up of such crazy characters anyway that it's I'm ready to be the teenage mutant lobster pizza boys, so I was ready for that.
Turtle power!
Oh, thanks, guys. You took 20 years off my life.
Big deal. What's 20 years to a turtle?
When I'm out playing golf or, the question comes up, what do you do? And, oh, you blah, blah, blah. But really, anything I've ever heard of? Ninja Turtles? Oh, my God. I've still got all my Ninja Turtle toys. That was, and you could see these people, that they start to get almost, Raphael, oh, my God, you have no idea what this means to me. And it's so flattering.
None of us had any idea that it was going to be big. In fact, I think that a lot of us thought, this was a grand experiment and that it was perhaps maybe too hip or too sharp, and we really did not know. And then once it came on the air, it seemed pretty clear that it was a huge rating success. We always knew we were doing fun work, but whether it was going to be a rating success or not, we really didn't know.
Guys, I think the big moment has arrived. Did you hear that, Leonardo? Come on, let's blow this Papa Louis stand.
The first time I heard of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, because not being a comic book fan really at the time, was when I was doing a show called Fraggle Rock, and it was the animated version for NBC back in 86, 87 now, and the guy who had cast us in Fraggle Rock was also, and directing Fraggle Rock, was also casting and directing this new show. And he came into one of the sessions one morning and he said, before we got started, he said, "You guys aren't going to believe this." And we said, "What?" And so he brings us over to the table and he pulls out of his bag a comic book. And it says Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. We all just looked at each other and said, "What in the world is that?" And he said, "It's a new cartoon we're going to be putting together."
One day, we got the call for an audition for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which I frankly thought was a joke. I had not heard of the underground comic. I didn't know that this was a whole cult thing that was going on.
Our show was much more benign than the comic book, and I think that's why it appealed mostly to parents and kids, because nobody ever died. Any damage was always the turtles fighting monsters and things getting smashed and broken, but nobody ever died, and they just wanted to go home and have pizza.
I love pizza, yeah. Even though that's really Michelangelo's thing, but I love pizza. All the turtles love pizza, and I love pizza.
But Donatello, you just have to fix the oven. I was counting on pizza tonight.
Sorry, Michelangelo. I'm afraid it's on its last legs.
You mean nothing can be done?
Nothing. I know it's rough, but you're gonna have to say goodbye to your old buddy.
Cam and myself, Townsend Coleman and Barry Gordon all auditioned for all 4 turtles different ways. And a lot of other actors did too, but they mixed and matched. It wasn't like this, okay, Rob, you're gonna audition for Raphael. And so we mixed and matched and played around, and I got the job.
The one that I ended up getting, Donatello, I never really created a voice for. They just said, use your own voice, and that's what I did. Now I see the trouble. The wire on the anode capacitor to the synchronous rheostat slipped off. There. Now it's working properly. So when people ask me, do Donatello, I am, I'm the only difference is I guess I pitch it a little higher, a little more animated and a little more teen. But basically, what you hear is kind of what you get.
I feel so ridiculous in this costume.
Hey, who are you supposed to be? The silly green giant?
Lucky for him, I'm a good guy, or I'd tell his mother.
You know, we had the kind of the Groucho Marx guy, you know, in Rob, and we had the Superman guy in Cam, and we had the science geek in me, and we had the surfer dude in Michelangelo. And I think because we had that breadth of characters, it gave something for a lot of different people to hook on to.
So we brought ourselves to it, you know, and improv some.
Susan Blue really let us flow and let us kind of create our own people, you know, as much as the models were there, the archetypes were there, but we were really able to bring a lot of ourselves to the roles.
Taste turtle steel! Boy, I wish I could get to say lines like that.
On that show, I never got the opportunity to do much riffing, much improving, because I literally was the setup guy.
He couldn't cut loose, and it was driving him crazy because he's one of the funniest guys. I mean, he kept us laughing, and you know, he's a very funny guy.
Cam's big line is, "We've got to do something." It seemed like Leonardo was saying that in every, "We've got to do something." You know, of course, mine was always, you know, "Whoa, dude," or "Cowabunga," or something like that.
You know, and the rest of everybody else on the show was bouncing all over the place, and I'm the one who says, "Come on, you guys, we got to think of something fast. You know, let's get back to work. There's no time to waste." You know, those were my lines.
You know, with that, "We've got to do something," and him giving it that bravura, and you know, the you know, the leader of the Turtles. In the beginning, that almost didn't happen that way. We knew that Rob was going to be Raphael, and that Barry was going to be Donatello. But they hadn't decided yet whether they wanted me as Michelangelo or Leonardo, and same with Cam. They were, you know, going to try us both out. So the very first recording session, we were doing a set of 5 episodes for this little mini-series pilot that we were doing. The very first recording session, they still hadn't decided. And so the director, at the time, Stu Rosen, said, "Tony, why don't you do Michelangelo first, Cam, you do Leonardo first, and you know, we'll do a read-through like that, and then we'll switch, and go back and do another read-through, and then we'll, you know, make our pick then." I got the luck of the draw, I guess, doing Michelangelo first. Well, the way things went during that recording session, I guess, perhaps were a little more tense than they had planned, and so it became very clear, you know, pretty early on, that we weren't going to go back and try it again with us switching parts. So we ended up, that first episode, finishing up with me as Michelangelo and Cam as Leonardo, and, you know, never got a chance to go back. You know, I mean, I guess I could have spent 10 years saying, "We've got to do something," and Cam could have spent 10 years going, "Cowabunga, dude!" And he would have done a great job.
So, Shredder, we meet again! Eat mutagen molecules, you green geeks!
You started seeing all the toys coming out, and, you know, kids starting to just recognize the characters, and, you know, pretty much anywhere you'd go, you'd see Ninja Turtles.
Nothing that they made surprised me at all. It was a merchandising feast, and they just all went crazy. They really did. I mean, I just remember walking into toy stores where you couldn't see anything else but Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I mean, the shelves were just covered with it.
Did a lot of answering machines. "Whoa, dude, Michelangelo here from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Phil's not home right now, but he'll be back. Cowabunga!" You know, so you get a lot of requests for that kind of thing.
Hey guys,
I was in
it's
line at the
Leonardo.
movies,
Remember him?
and I saw this little kid, maybe 8 years old, and this is a true story. This really happened. And he had a little turtle hat and T-shirt, and even had the doll. I mean, he was just like a walking advertisement for the show, right? And I figured, I'm going to give this kid a thrill, you know? And I walked up to him, and I said, "So, you like the Ninja Turtles, huh?" And he's got, I mean, he has an ice cream, and he's going, you know, he goes, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, guess what? I'm Leonardo." And without missing a beat, he goes, "Uh-huh, and I'm Donatello." And he walks away, and I'm just like this, standing there talking down to him. And it's like, well, that was really embarrassing. And that was my brush with fame.
I remember going back to Cleveland, which was my hometown, maybe 3 or 4 years into the series, and was at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and my son was playing there, and so I'm just there being this proud dad, but then somebody somehow found out that I was doing Michelangelo and Ninja Turtles and brought their kid up to me and said, Mr. Coleman, my son really wants to hear you do Michelangelo. And as right in a crowd of people. I said, well, okay. And so I said, what's your name? He says, Mikey. I said, whoa, Mikey, dude, you are awesome. Cowabunga! And the kid just looked up at me and he said, that's not him. And I said, well, it's the best I can do, I'm sorry. But I realized at that point that, even though this kid was, sort of busting my chops, that, here I was out of Hollywood, kind of back home, being able to look back and go, oh my gosh, this thing is huge.
Michelangelo, that's your 6th pizza in less than an hour. Have you ever thought of calling Pizza Eaters Anonymous?
I don't know. Do they deliver?
I probably get 25 or 30 letters a month from people all over the world for different shows that want autographs. And throughout every year, there are probably 8 or 10 that I'll get that will say, Mr. Paulson, you'll probably never read this, but when I was a junior in high school, my parents got a divorce, or my father died, or I was having a real hard time with school, or I used to get beat up all the time, and I can't tell you what it meant to me to watch Turtles or Pinky and the Brain gave me happiness in my life when I had no happiness. And I just want to tell you I can't tell you what that means to me, because I don't see that. We don't get immediate feedback. It's a very anonymous profession. I know millions of people watch this stuff, but when people send me notes and say, I can't tell you what it meant to me that Raphael, or you called me once when I was in the hospital and I had leukemia. I'm now 32 years old and I have 2 kids, and I lived on that phone call for a month. I really appreciate it. You'll never know, and I'll never meet this kid.
Like at Christmas time, I think it was a law office, I'm not sure, but would donate their floor, and all of us cartoon folk would pile in there, and we make calls, Christmas calls, to kids who'd been submitted, like sick kids and stuff like that. And it was really rough, talking to these little bitty kids, and you've got cards in front of you that says what they're sick with. This one's got leukemia, and this one's got, whatever. And these little tiny voices, pick up the phone, and you've got to, you're doing this juggling act to make them smile. And some of these kids couldn't talk. They were so sick they couldn't talk. And the mom would get on the phone after. And so I've got to just vamp. I'm going, hey, it's Leonardo. How you doing? It's like silence. Well, I hope you're doing good. I hear you have to have an operation. And I'm trying to do this stuff to, calm them down or whatever. And I don't have a clue as to, how they're receiving this. And the mom inevitably would get on the phone and say, I know, Lisa didn't say anything, but if you could have seen her face, You
get them on the phone and you realize that right now, at this point in time, this is probably the only thing that's going to pick this little guy up out of his, place in his head and really put a smile on his face.
A great friend named Ryan Jean, and Ryan is the consummate Turtles fan. And, Ryan's been kind of instrumental in my life in kind of keeping Turtles somewhat in a foreground, because it's very easy to kind of let it go. And I think I let it go for a long time until I got to know Ryan, and then what was staggering to me was how important it was to Ryan, and how much meaning the Turtles had from really almost a moral perspective. And I'd never really thought about Turtles that way.
Now you understand, my student. Once you were forced to use them, your hidden talents emerged.
You're right, Master Splinter. I guess we never know what we're capable of unless we try.
But still in all, that Master Splinter wanted to teach his students right from wrong and make sure they were all in a straight and narrow, and would rope them in a little bit here and there.
You don't get that many shots at doing something like that. in the cartoon world. You know, there are a lot of hit and miss cartoons that are on for 13 weeks or less. You know, and I've had my share of those. But to create something like that was tremendous fun, and the fact that people still recognize it, and apparently it's going through another generation now, which is even more interesting. And of course, through the DVDs, you know, there'll be even more.
It was like a fraternity with a couple of chicks. Yeah, we got along great. And lots of giggling and lots of silliness, and you know, we get paid for it. And I don't know when they're going to ask for the money back, but it could happen when they realize that we were just playing around.
There are a couple of people who I have kept in touch with over the years who grew up with Ninja Turtles, and it really, really meant a lot to them. And they would say things like, I appreciate you so much because of what you taught me, what Michelangelo taught me about, you know, keeping your head up or having a good attitude or, you know, trying to, you know, stay happy and, you know, be positive. And when I was doing the show, of course, I mean, I never looked at it like that. I never looked at somehow this character or these lines or this story could somehow be beneficial or meaningful to a kid, you know, in the sense that it really helped them develop some sort of, you know, internal qualities in life.
And we would not be here talking if most people didn't like Turtles. We wouldn't be here talking. It would be just another goofy cartoon show that would be an asterisk in TV history. But we're talking because most of the people loved it.